Day 65 of the war in Gaza, and both IDF commanders and Israeli war cabinet ministers are saying that Hamas resistance is beginning to break. The claims came amid ongoing intense fighting, with progress being made in both northern and southern Gaza. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
IDF Chief of Staff Halevi said there are signs Hamas's terrorist system is falling apart. Defense Minister Gallant echoed the remarks, saying Hamas was starting to crumble. Speaking during Hanukkah candlelighting with troops, Halevi said Hamas gunmen began surrendering in significant numbers.
אני רואה את ההישגים מיום ליום. אנחנו רואים כל יום עוד ועוד מחבלים שנהרגים, עוד ועוד מחבלים שנפצעים, ואנחנו רואים בימים האחרונים מחבלים שנכנעים. סימן להתפרקות של המערכת, סימן לזה שצריך ללחוץ יותר חזק, וזה מה שאתם עושים.
The IDF is operating intensively in northern and southern Gaza, destroying remaining resistance in Jabalia and Shejaiya in the north and Khan Yunis in the south. Troops of Nachal's infantry brigade's 931st Battalion are battling Hamas operatives in northern Gaza's Jabalia. The Kfir Infantry Brigade is advancing on remaining Hamas cells in Shejaiya. The 98th Division and paratroopers are advancing in Khan Yunis, where Hamas leadership is believed hiding underground. Defense Ministry officials are now saying it will take 3 to 4 weeks to complete operations in Khan Yunis, and a further 3 to 4 weeks of intensive fighting throughout Gaza to end this stage of the war to destroy Hamas. The army confirmed that many Hamas members have surrendered to troops in the Gaza Strip in recent days, and they have revealed intelligence information on the terror groups functioning during the ground offensive. Captured Hamas members say their leadership is out of touch with the reality of Israel's victories all over Gaza. The prisoners said there is widespread feeling that the Hamas leadership underground does not care about the public in Gaza who are above ground. Ordinary Gazans are now speaking out against Hamas. This comment to CNN.
My prime and immediate enemy is Hamas, not the occupation. I have no house, no life, nothing. We're condemned to suffer because of this stupid organization. Who made us live in poverty in Gaza? Not the Jews, Hamas.
Over the weekend, the IDF announced that 2 soldiers were seriously wounded in a failed attempt to rescue Israeli hostages. Several of the hostage takers were killed. The rescue attempt comes as the military increased its push into Hamas strongholds while using intelligence to locate some of the remaining 134 hostages believed still hidden in Gaza.
They deny the kidnapping of our children, the murder of our grandchildren, the rape of our daughters. The new Nazis we face today will stop at nothing to destroy civilization as we know it. The World Jewish Congress was created exactly for these times like this, so every Jew can fall asleep at night knowing they are safe in their own home. We are a voice for the Jewish people everywhere. We are the World Jewish Congress.
And joining us now to discuss the latest on the IDF's mission in the Gaza Strip, it's Alex Tryman, the Jerusalem Bureau Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. Alex, the IDF is by now deep into southern Gaza, with serious fighting in Jabalia and Shejaiya. What are the latest updates on the ground?
Is intense. As you know, most of the Gazan residents have migrated to the southern Gaza Strip, making it much more difficult for the IDF to fight amidst all of the civilians, as opposed to in the north. There's been a lot of gunfights. There have been operations to try to rescue hostages, which haven't gone well. At the same time, there's reports that the IDF is flooding the tunnel network throughout Gaza, and also a change in the strategy where Israel's no longer just killing all of the militants that they encounter, but actually arresting them. And we've seen pictures of many of them stripped down to their underwear with their hands tied behind their backs and being loaded onto trucks and even taken into Israel.
Now, the IDF said taking over this part of the Gaza Strip should take another month or so. How feasible is this? Does Israel have the time?
Well, there's definitely a difference of opinion between Israel and the United States on how long it will take. The IDF has said that it might take 3 to 4 weeks to do what they did in the north and the south, and then possibly another 3 to 4 weeks on top of that to wrap up fighting in the Gaza Strip, meaning that the fighting could last until the end of January. Defense Minister Gallant has said that the Israeli public is giving wide support for that type of an operation. When Secretary Blinken was here last week, he said that, quote, Israel might not have that much credit, and they would like to see the fighting end closer to the end of this calendar year.
Now, as you mentioned, over the weekend, we saw such images of Hamas terrorists surrendering, giving up their weapons. What do images like these do to Hamas morale?
Well, I think that it's actually destroying Hamas morale. I mean, these images and videos are stunning, and they are added to images of Israeli flags all over the Gaza Strip, images of IDF soldiers lighting candles for Hanukkah in the middle of Palestinian villages in the Gaza Strip. I think it's becoming very, very clear to everyone in Gaza, including Hamas operatives, that the IDF is now the sovereign in the Gaza Strip and that Hamas is on its last legs.
And how long do you think Hamas can continue on this battlefront?
They still have militants, hiding out in tunnels. They're still, to this day, firing rockets at Israeli population centers. They have a culture of martyrdom, and they will fight to the death. And as long as there continue to be operatives, as long as the senior leadership like Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif and others are still alive and kicking inside Gaza, expect the fighting to continue. And hopefully within the next 4 to 8 weeks, we'll see the senior leadership of Hamas taken out, the rockets depleted, the tunnels destroyed, and Hamas's full surrender.
Now, if Hamas is out of the picture eventually, what can we expect in the day after in the Gaza Strip?
Well, the Gaza Strip's been totally devastated. And it's clear that the IDF is not going to simply leave the Gaza Strip and create a vacuum, which can then be filled again by Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad or other militants. So the IDF is not going to go anywhere after this is over. The question is, who will administer the Gaza Strip on the day after, what type of aid there will be, and how many Gazan residents are left. It could very well be that many will flee via the Rafah crossing to Egypt before it's over. And these are all questions that will have to get answered on the day after.
And if the Gazans are unable to return, what are their other options?
Well, we're starting to see reports that Egypt may be willing to accept Gazan refugees, provided that they don't stay inside Egypt. It's clear that Egypt doesn't want to resettle them, but there are possibilities that maybe some could go to Turkey, maybe some could go to Europe, maybe some could go to other Arab nations across the Middle East and North Africa. These are the types of diplomatic developments that the United States and others are going to have to broker to allow Gazans the ability to flee the war zone and the devastation, because quite frankly, many of their homes have been destroyed and there's no place for them to go.
Alex Tryman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
The IDF announced the names of 5 more fallen soldiers killed in the war against Hamas. 25-year-old Master Sergeant in Reserves Liav Atiyah, a soldier in the 66th 23rd Battalion from Be'er Sheva. 25-year-old Master Sergeant in Reserves Omri Ben Shachar, a soldier in the 66th 23rd Battalion from Givatayim. 25-year-old Staff Sergeant Jonathan Din Chaim, a soldier from the Combat Engineering Corps 603rd Battalion from Ramat Gan. And 19-year-old Sergeant Maor Cohen Isenkot, a soldier in the Golani Brigade's 12th Battalion from Eilat. More on this story from ILTV's Devo Klein.
The battle hit all too close to home for War Cabinet Minister and former IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Isenkots, as his son, Gal Meir Isenkots, was killed in northern Gaza. The 25-year-old from Herzliya served in reserves as an infantry fighter in the 699th Battalion of the 551st Reserve Brigade.
אני מתחייב בפניך שנעשה הכל כדי להיות ראויים בתרומה להחלטות הנכונות למען מי שהקריב, למען חבריך לנשק ולמען העם הישראלי כולו, שמחבק אותנו בשעה הקשה הזו.
Among those present at the funeral were Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Yitzhak Herzog. Minister in the War Cabinet Benny Gantz, chairman of the National Unity Party, paid tribute to Gal and spoke of the heavy price of war.
המסע הלאומי במלחמה הצודקת ביותר הוא מסע כבד, קשה וכואב. רק הנהגה שהיא חלק מהעם תוכל לו. רק צבא העם ינצח.
The personal family tragedy was amplified when just days later, Gadi Isenkots' nephew, Maor Meir Cohen, died in combat as well. The two Isenkot cousins, both named after their same grandfather, Meir, shared the same tragic fate as they were both killed while fighting in the Gaza Strip.
Additionally, the Kibbutz Be'eri community announced yesterday that Sahar Baruch, a 25-year-old kibbutz member who was taken hostage by Hamas terrorists, was murdered in captivity. The IDF has yet to confirm this. Hundreds gathered at the hostage square in Tel Aviv to rally for the release of the remaining 137 hostages in the Gaza Strip. More in this story.
The protesters chanted, "All of them now," referring to their expectation of the immediate release of all hostages of various groups and ages.
It gives you energy. The fact that the population of the Israeli country is behind us helps us in our battle of putting the hostage situation and the release of the hostages ahead.
Testimonies of 5 Israeli hostages who were freed from Hamas were screened during the rally as they described the hunger and the poor conditions in captivity, expressing great fear for the lives of those who remain behind.
It's every day, all night, every minute, every second of the day. You feel, you are so scared, and you know that your son needs you, and you cannot help him.
Members of the Forum for the Hostage met with the Security Cabinet last week and demanded the release of their loved ones.
When I was there Tuesday at the War Cabinet meeting, I put this in front of them and said, we have no time, and you will be judged by the ability of how many and how soon hostages you're able to bring back alive.
We really think that there is no other way, because our nation will not be able to continue on to exist if the hostages will not come home.
Joining us now from the United States is Andrea Weinstein, whose family is currently held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. Andrea, I'm so sorry for what your family is going through. Can you please share with us the latest that you heard from your family that dark day on October 7th?
My sister, Judy Weinstein Chagi, and her husband, Gadi Chagi, were out for their early morning walk. They live on kibbutz near Oz, which, as we know, was obliterated. Even before that happened, they were out for a very early walk, and there is some video footage of them leaving through the gate. And they were walking along and saw and heard rockets overhead, so took to the ground face down so they wouldn't be hit by the rockets. And we know through family discussion that they were hit. They were shot actually by terrorists on motorcycles. And my brother-in-law was shot more severely, and my sister was also shot, but not as badly, and was able to call to the kibbutz, to the paramedics. They were not able to send the ambulance because Hamas came in and destroyed the ambulance. There was another call that my sister made that we understand, and still help did not arrive. We've not had any contact with them since October 7th.
Have any government officials been in touch with you throughout this period?
There has been some contact, and my niece, Iris Chagi Weinstein, or Weinstein Chagi, has had a lot of contact and has been unbelievable in doing detective work and making contact with everyone, as have other family members. my sister has tri-citizenship, Canadian, American, and Israeli. So we've been in touch with Canadian authorities as well. And so there has been contact, but there's no information. And the thing I would like to tell you about my sister and her husband, their lifestyle is all about peace. It's all about living in harmony and being creative. My sister is an English teacher. My sister teaches mindfulness to children and to adults to help them deal with the chaos that's around them. They are neighbors of Gaza. They are there to support their neighbors and to live, for everyone to live in peace and freedom and be able to live productive, creative lives. That's who they are. And it's really horrific that these families, these civilians, were attacked in such a horrific way.
Absolutely. The Red Cross have not visited your family members or any of the hostages held in Hamas captivity in Gaza. What do you have to say to them?
Yes, the Red Cross has got to get involved. They've got to provide care to the hostages. They have to go in there and save people's lives. They have a responsibility to save people's lives, and they have ways to treat people medically appropriately so that they can resolve their problems, so they don't have to live with pain or discomfort or without the medications that are so sorely needed.
Now, many of the Israelis who were murdered and kidnapped in the kibbutzes close to the Gaza Strip are and were, as you say, peace-seeking individuals.
These are civilians, peace-loving civilians. They've chosen to live on the border of Gaza because they have hopes that there can be peace in the region. That is why these people live there. These are the people who live on kibbutz near Oz, who were murdered, who were destroyed. This is who they are. We need some hope.
Andrea Weinstein, thank you very much for speaking to us. The United States vetoed a United Nations resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. 13 Security Council members voted in favor of the motion, but the U.S. vetoed and Britain abstained. More in this report from ILTV's Devo Klein.
The United States and Israel opposed the UN Security Council call for a ceasefire, saying it would only benefit Hamas. The U.S. offered and the Security Council rejected substantial amendments to the draft, including a condemnation of the October 7th Hamas attacks that murdered 1,200 Israelis and with 240 people taken hostage. The U.S. defended its veto, saying that the one-sided UN notion failed to condemn the Hamas massacre or Israel's rights to defend itself.
Unfortunately, nearly all of our recommendations were ignored, and the result of this rushed process was an imbalanced resolution that was divorced from reality, that would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way. And so, we regretfully could not support it. This text also failed to acknowledge that Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorism, consistent with international law. This is a right to which all states are entitled. As I stated earlier today, no country could or should tolerate what Hamas did on October 7th.
The U.S. veto of the Security Council demand for a so-called immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the war has isolated Washington as it backs Israel's war in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu thanked the United States for its continuing support for Israel in the war with Hamas.
אני מאוד מעריך את העמדה הנכונה שארצות הברית נקטה במועצת הביטחון של האו"ם. גם מדינות אחרות צריכות להבין שאי אפשר מצד אחד לתמוך בחיסול של החמאס, ומצד שני לקרוא להפסקת המלחמה שתמנע את חיסול החמאס. ולכן ישראל תמשיך במלחמה הצודקת שלנו לחיסול החמאס ולהשגת שאר מטרות המלחמה שהצבנו.
The diplomatic support comes with a price that includes listening to demands from Washington for fewer civilian casualties and more humanitarian aid in Gaza.
It is imperative, it remains imperative, that Israel put a premium on civilian protection. And there does remain a gap between exactly what I said when I was there, the intent to protect civilians, and the actual results that we're seeing on the ground.
Israel will not accept Hezbollah on its northern border. That's the warning from National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi, who said that intensified IDF action is needed to remove Hezbollah from the frontier after 2 months of cross-border violence. This after another weekend of cross-border violence that left an Israeli civilian dead. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
National Security Director Tzachi Hanegbi warned that Israeli retaliation will increase in order to force Hezbollah away from the northern border to north of the Litani River, as called for in UN Resolution 1701. Hanegbi says intensified IDF action on the northern border is likely, though preferably not in parallel with the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Hanegbi's comments followed this warning from Prime Minister Netanyahu.
אם חיזבאללה יבחר לפתוח במלחמה כוללת, אז הוא במו ידיו יהפוך את ביירות ואת דרום לבנון, לא רחוק מכאן, לעזה ולח'אן יונס.
The warnings from Israel came after a weekend in which 60-year-old Israeli civilian Eyal Uzan was killed when Hezbollah hit the vehicle he was riding in with an anti-tank missile. 6 soldiers and 4 civilians have been killed on the northern front since the start of the war in Gaza. Israel retaliated fiercely to the latest provocations. Fighter jets struck military compounds and other sites belonging to Hezbollah. An Israeli drone strike killed 3 Hezbollah members, including Hassan Ali Dakduk, son of Ali Dakduk, head of Hezbollah operations in southern Syria. More than 110 people have been killed on the Lebanese side since early October, most of them Hezbollah fighters.
And in other news, University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill has tendered her resignation amid controversy over her stance on anti-Semitism on campus.
McGill, along with the presidents of MIT and Harvard, faced criticism following their testimony at the congressional hearing addressing the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses and the aftermath of the Israel-Hamas war. At the hearing, McGill denounced anti-Semitism, but also defended students' freedom of speech.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill.
In the aftermath of the hearing, the board of Penn's Warden School called for new leadership, and McGill issued a video statement clarifying her stance.
I want to be clear. A call for genocide of Jewish people is threatening. Deeply so. It is intentionally meant to terrify a people who have been subjected to pogroms and hatred for centuries and were the victims of mass genocide in the Holocaust. In my view, it would be harassment or intimidation.
More than 70 U.S. lawmakers demanded the governing boards of 3 of the country's top universities to remove their presidencies. New York's governor weighed in on the controversy and made it clear that calls for genocide of any group would constitute a violation of New York State human rights law and Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, editor of All Israel News. Sign up for our free daily email for the latest news from Jerusalem. Go to allisrael.com.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly cloudy skies are expected tonight throughout the country with lows of around 12 degrees Celsius or 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, partly cloudy skies alongside steady temperatures set to reach high of 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv. with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.